Region of Peel for Thursday, April the 24th. Roll call. All members are present except Mayor Crombie's on other municipal business. Councillor Fonseca, I believe, will be a little late, and all other members are present. Are there any declarations of conflicts of interest? Seeing none then. I just wanted to mention that April 28th is scheduled for our next council meeting, and I know there's a number of council members that will be attending the National Day of Mourning, so we're going to push the meeting to 12:30, and I know there's yeah, just to accommodate those, so I hope everybody's in agreement with that.
We'll have lunch for them at 12.
And the clerk's just advised me that lunch will be available at 12, just prior to that meeting. All right. Approval of the minutes of the March 31st, 2016 Regional Council meeting. Moved by Councillor Grove, second by Councillor Sato. All in favor? Carried. Approval of the agenda. Moved by Mayor Thompson, second by Councillor Yanika. All in favor then? Carried. Just before we get into the, oh yes, Mayor Jeffrey.
I understand that there was a youth homeless report being added to our agenda. Is that right?
That's correct. It's on the agenda.
Which item is it?
It's 5.2, and there's a delegation on it as well by Shelley White. After.
Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, the delegation's 5.2. The report is 9.2. I'd like to take a brief moment this morning to say a few words about what was somewhat of an interesting news week recently. I certainly don't want to start a debate on the matter, but rather wanted to provide some assurances of members of council. As most of you have heard by now or read by now, our friends in Mississauga last week made a decision to undertake a study to look at the ramifications, positive and negative, of becoming a single-tier municipality. Brampton, through Mayor Jeffrey, had issued a response briefly outlining some of the concerns with some of the comments by Mayor Crombie. And my comments to the media were that, while I respect Mississauga's decision to study the matter in more detail, we're currently undergoing a governance review process at the region, and that regardless of any local studies being commissioned, I would expect that all three mayors on the region's governance task force continue to participate in good faith in order to try and reach a consensus position that best benefits Peel residents. Since then, I've had the opportunity to speak with both Mayor Crombie and Mayor Jeffrey about their public comments, and in addition with Mayor Thompson, and have obtained agreement from all three mayors that we will continue with the process already underway to look at the future governance of Peel Region. I've also had the opportunity to speak directly with Minister McMeekin about the matter, who remains committed to allowing our current process to unfold. I expect that comments like the types that have been made public recently will feature prominently in our facilitated deliberations, and I also suspect that those of you who have had a chance to meet with the facilitator have already shared similar views. We are moving forward with the process that was agreed upon by this council, and I have full confidence that despite the long history and emotions associated with this file, that we will all participate in good faith. At the end of the day, we cannot afford to lose sight of our ultimate goal, which is determining the best way to represent the 1.4 million residents who rely on us to make important decisions on their behalf. I look forward to you all having a chance to share your own views with the facilitator in the coming weeks, and to continuing with the work of the task force in discussing these important governance matters in more detail. Thank you. Councillor Sato.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I agree with the comments that you have made, and thank you for making them. But I just wanted to make it very clear that it was not the intent of all of Mississauga Council to declare that we are withdrawing from the region of Peel. As you know, the study that was done is 2003, the financial study. And those of us that supported, some of us that supported the motion, was merely to get a more updated study, which I think is appropriate. However, in all of the media hype over that announcement, what was ignored by the media and what was lost was the statement by our council that and it was a motion that I put forward, that right now our key priority is, as you say, the governance issue here at the Region of Peel with regard to the representation, particularly the City of Brampton's request that we had committed to go into discussions with. And the motion gave very clear direction to the Mayor of Mississauga of the position of the City of Mississauga Council that is our priority today, and that all of those negotiations would proceed in good faith. So as unfortunately the Mayor is not here today, but as a member of council and the member of council that moved that motion, I feel very strongly that our focus right now has to be on the discussions that the three mayors and the CEOs and the chair are undertaking, so that we can determine to assist Brampton in particular with going forward, because we understand that you have to make your decisions with regard to your ward boundaries. So Mississauga is firmly committed to working with you on that. And unfortunately, when the media gets these wonderful stories and runs with it, and it's all across everywhere, that tends to overshadow the real work that is taking place. And I want to also say that I value the work that our regional staff do and the work that we do around this regional council. I think we provide excellent service to our constituents. We always have, and we will. And we do very, very important work here at the region. And our staff, we're a team up here at the region. And whether we have differences behind the scenes, we're always going to have that. We're always going to be a little bit parochial. But, right now we have a Region of Peel, and that's what we should be working with and supporting. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for that. And I would agree that we're definitely well-governed and well-managed in this regional municipality. Councillor Shaughnessy.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Councillor Sato, for those words. That is nice to hear. I have a concern from a resident, and I need clarification. There has been surveying done in Caledon that I know of, and it says it's being done by the Region of Peel, asking about governance questions. And one of my residents received that call last night, and I just wanted to know whether, and I'm going to qualify it, they thought it sounded like they were representing the Region of Peel, and I just need to know whether anybody is actually surveying or not from the Region of Peel.
I'll ask the CEO to respond to that, because I'm not aware of it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No, there's no staff-initiated survey about governance underway. We completed, and I'm not sure if it's on this agenda or the next, I think it's on the next agenda. We, every 2 years, we do a survey of people who use our service and report back to council on the customer service satisfaction scores. We did that, but we did that late last year. So it couldn't be that. So I'm not aware of any survey by regional, authorized by regional staff on governance.
Thank you.
Mayor Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I got to say, I'm glad you made your speech here this morning. I think it's very important, and I think we're all here to serve our residents' appeal. And I think that's a commitment we all have, and we're all going through a process, and we're all going to work together to get this achieved. So thank you very much for your comments, and Callan's here to work with everybody to find a fair result.
Thank you. Councillor Miles.
Very much, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I wanted to acknowledge, Mr. Chairman, the work that you did on this issue, and for coming forward and making a public statement. I, for one, really appreciate that. And secondly, I'd like to thank Councillor Sato for the clarification, because quite frankly, we didn't know that as the City of Brampton really did not know that that motion had been put on the floor or the intent of the City of Mississauga. And Brampton Council did pass a motion yesterday, and I'll leave it perhaps for the mayor to clarify. I prefer that the mayor clarify Brampton's position as well, but thank you for that clarification. It certainly, I believe, makes the City of Brampton feel better. Thank you.
Mayor Jeffrey, did you wish to comment?
I didn't actually, but thank you.
Or we can start the meeting.
No, so I appreciate your comments, and I appreciate this is an issue that we all, I think most of us feel pretty strongly about, and certainly Brampton does have a position. It's the same position the City of Brampton has held in the past, with that all members of council would be sitting at this table. And it's something that we've just formalized as of yesterday, but we will be part of the facilitation process. We want to go into this in a good faith, and we will continue to sit at the table, and we look forward to the debate that comes from it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. We'll move right into delegations then. Shelley White, President, Chief Executive Officer, United Way of Peel. There she is.
Good morning. Thank you very much, Chair
Welcome.
Dale and members of council. I am delighted. Am I delegating on the presentation of the United Way check presentation? Is this I'm here for two delegations, so I just want to be clear on which delegation this is.
Do whatever. This is
This is for the United Way campaign.
this is for
to
that
thank
contribution. Yeah.
that little contribution?
I didn't say little.
Good morning, Chair Dale and members of council, CAO SWARC, and Region of Peel management and employees. It is such a pleasure to be here this morning to have this opportunity to once again thank the Region of Peel for your extraordinary leadership and commitment to the residents of Peel Region, who are most vulnerable in our community. And I am so delighted to be here with many of my staff from the United Way. We all wanted to be here to thank the region. So you all know Anita Stalinga, our VP of Community Investment, Carol Kataka, who is our VP of Stakeholder Relations, Raj Tendengra, who's our Resource Development Manager and who works closely with the region. We also have Jen Turner, who works closely with our Community Investment team, and we're all delighted to be here to thank you for this. I just got back from a United Way meeting in Edmonton, and I don't have notes, so I'm reading this from my iPhone. So, this effort was an extraordinary one, and I really want to thank Kellyanne Salerno and Grace Giles, the campaign chairs, for their extraordinary leadership. They really did an outstanding job, and I think they deserve a big round of applause from the region for their leadership. And of course, they were supported by a huge campaign team that was Vice Chair Judy LaBelle and an entire group of volunteers who made this effort possible. We also want to thank the leadership chairs Sue Ritchie and Dave Bingham for their outstanding work. And we'd also like to acknowledge and thank the Peel Regional Police, who are an important part of this campaign. And I know that Deputy Chief Brian Adams is here, Inspector Sean McKenna, Inspector Scott Sharman, and Sergeant John Caribs, who was actually loaned to us by Peel Regional Police for the duration of the campaign, as well as Superintendent Dale Mumby. And they are representing a tremendous effort by Peel Regional Police as well. So thank you very, very much for your work. And I also a special thanks to corporate sponsors Gail Bursey and Eileen Baird for your strategic leadership and support of this group as well. Thank you so very, very much. So the region of Peel does absolutely outstanding work, and the relationship that the United Way has with the region is year-round. And as a result, we're committed to ensuring that everyone in our community thrives, and in particular supporting those individuals in our community that are most vulnerable. And as a result of your tremendous accomplishment, raising over $436,000, which is absolutely phenomenal. Do you know that you are the second largest United Way campaign in Peel Region, and this is without a corporate grant? This is all funds that have been raised through the employees and the unions here at the region of Peel. Number one is Suncor Energy. Isn't in your ward, yes. But so I think that I raise that because I think that says a lot about the commitment and the leadership of this council to make a real difference in the lives of people in this community. So I really wanted to highlight that. And I also want to congratulate you on receiving the United Way Spirit Award for your joint labor management campaign. That's phenomenal. So thank you very, very much for that work. And you know that these funds will be used to make a real difference. Already, in the first 6 months of this year, over 105,000 people have been supported in Mississauga, Brampton, and Caledon through the 54 agencies and the 89 programs that the funds that you have raised will support. Of that, 38,268 children and youth have been supported. And let me tell you about one of those youth that I met, Joshua Copperwaite. Joshua is 19 years old. And if any of you were at Peel Children's Center's gala, you would have heard him speak. What a courageous young man. Joshua experienced abuse throughout his childhood by his father. And as a result, he has experienced anxiety, depression, trauma. And he's 19 years old. He's now a student at Peel Alternative School through Peel District School Board. I'm so pleased to say, as a result of the support that he received through Peel Children's Center and Nexus, he's finishing high school. He's been accepted to go to university, and he is moving on through his life. And he has said that if it wasn't for the support that he received through Nexus and Peel Children's Center, he's not sure he would be here today. The funding that you're providing not only makes a difference in people's lives, it saves people's lives. And so I want to highlight how important that is. So together, last year we were able to help over 187,000 people, and I have no doubt that moving forward into 2016, we'll be able to do that and even more. We're creating possibility together. We're creating hope and opportunity. And so I want to thank you very much for being such tremendous partners in this important work in our community. And I want to thank all of you for a very, very successful United Way campaign in 2015 and look forward to another highly successful campaign in 2016. Thank you very, very much.
Okay. Thank you, Shelley. I know David has a few remarks that he would like to make at this time, and then I'll go to the councillors.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Shelley, thank you for your leadership and your help and the help of all the United Way staff for our campaign. You thanked many of the people I want to thank, but I'm going to repeat what you've said somewhat. But on behalf of the leadership team here, I really do want to thank the co-chairs, Grace Giles and Kellyanne Salerno. Stand up, please. They have become affectionately known in the corporation this year as Grace Kelly. They are one person. And along with Sue Ritchie and Dave Bingham, who led our leadership campaign, they did an absolutely amazing job. And they encouraged staff across the organization to volunteer 1,100 hours to put into this campaign. We didn't take the work away from those staff who put in the 1,100 hours. They did that on top of their day-to-day work. And along with the Deputy Chief and our colleagues in Peel Regional Police, I think our combined effort doesn't really help the United Way. As Shelley says, it really puts $460,000 into 57 or 54 community agencies that help over almost 190,000 people in this community. And I firmly believe that if we did not participate in raising these funds in this organization to support the United Way and those agencies will be here delegating to council and asking for support. And that request for support will be far greater than the small investment that we make in staff to run the campaign every year. So on behalf of all of the leadership team, I do want to thank all of the staff who are involved, the volunteers, and of course all of the staff who donated to the United Way this year, and to thank Shelley and your team for helping us do that.
Thank you, David. Councillor Groves.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I won't repeat what Shelley and David has said, but certainly it's great that we were able to raise the funds we have. I guess two words, Shelley, that you said in your presentation, it's hope and opportunity. And I think that resonates, that resonates well with me, because we go on through our day-to-day lives not realizing how many people are truly in need. So that old saying, you've got to walk a mile in someone's shoe. So I would like to thank you and your staff and your team and your volunteers for doing what you do and providing the services that you provide. There's a perception out there, especially in Caledon, that we don't have people in need in Caledon, because Caledon is so affluent, but that it isn't true. Caledon Community Services, they do a lot of great work in our community. I'm sure, Shelley, you work very closely with them. And so on behalf of my constituents in my ward, I want to thank you for the help that you provide them and for the opportunity that you provide them with and for the hope that you've given them. And thank you for sharing Joshua's story. That's a great story. And I hope that there'll be many, many Joshuas that you're able to help in the future, because they do become our leaders. So thank you.
Thank you very much. And certainly, Shelley, on behalf of all of Regional Council, I want to first thank and congratulate the Grace Kelly team and all of our staff who participated in the campaign, as well as our Peel Regional Police for their support in this campaign as well. And to you, Shelley, your board, to your staff, to the hundreds of volunteers that have worked tirelessly throughout the year in regards to this campaign, I want to congratulate all of you as well. And thanks for being here today.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, we're going to bring forward the report. It's report 10.6, and moved by Councillor Groves, seconded by Councillor Yanika, that the Region of Peel employees continue to be supported in their contributions to the Region of Peel Employee United Way campaign, and that their ongoing commitment to Peel community be recognized. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried. Thank you. And you can stay right there, because you're next up again. It's a double header, I guess.
Is there are we going to do a check presentation with a picture at all?
We could, just before we do that, though,
Okay.
I didn't want, there's some students here,
Yeah.
I believe from Holy Name of Mary. If you just, yeah, they're here on the item that you're going to speak to next with regards to the youth homelessness. And I just have to say that it's great to have young people get engaged, no matter what the subject is and no matter what level of government it's at. So we're really grateful that you're here today to listen and participate. Thank you.
Okay.
We can go down for the check presentation, and then we'll move into the next delegation.
I usually try think they might want to take that step to
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
I said to Shelley, we made sure it wasn't made out of rubber because we didn't want it to bounce. Just before you begin, Shelley, I'll just ask for a receipt of your previous delegation, moved
Sure.
by Councillor Miles and seconded by Councillor Moore. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried. Great. And Shelley's here now to, with regarding the youth homelessness within our community.
Yes.
Welcome again.
Thank you very much, Chair Dale. And I think it's really fitting that I have the opportunity to speak to the report to Council on the youth shelter following the presentation and the celebration of the great work that the United Way and the region has done together with the campaign. Because this is a very practical demonstration of what the needs are in the community and how we're working together to address these needs. We all know that Peel has a very young community. We have many, many, many thousands of youth and children that live in our community. And unfortunately, youth homelessness is a serious issue in our community. I think all of us know at least of one youth who's been homeless as a result of experiencing abuse, being abandoned by their family, perhaps having an argument with their parents and needing a cooling off period, or perhaps making some poor choices in their life and perhaps being asked by their family to leave until they clean up their act. But regardless of the reason, as parents, as the CEO of the United Way, as a mother, I could not tolerate the fact, could not live with the fact that a youth who does not have a home does not have a safe place to go, where they're going to be cared for, where they're going to be warm, where they're going to be safe, where they're going to get the counseling and support they need to get back on their feet. This is absolutely imperative in our community. And unfortunately, Brampton, a community of 500,000 people, does not have a youth shelter. And it's not, when you're a kid and you're on your own, and if you don't have any money in your pocket, it's not practical to get to the youth shelter in Mississauga. And heaven forbid, if you go to a youth shelter in Toronto, you may not get back. And the youth shelters in Toronto are saying, please develop solutions in your community because your youth are at higher risk if they come to Toronto. So it's imperative that we have a youth shelter. And as a result, in February, Council put forward 3 motions to move forward with this. And the Region of Peel shared with us on Wednesday the report that was coming to Council. And so I just want to make a few comments in terms of this extraordinary report. I work for the United Way because I care deeply about this community. And so I don't think it'd be a surprise to you that I became quite emotional when I read this report. Emotional because I was so happy to see the recommendation and the solution that was being brought forward. The United Way completely supports this report and this recommendation to convert the Kanchunkuzi Child Care Center to a 30-bed interim youth shelter. This is phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. You know, I've been the CEO of the United Way Appeal Region for 12 years. I've been to council several times, but I think you all recall when we were here with Success by Six and the Peel Children and Youth Initiative. You know, one of the #1 priorities for the United Way is supporting our children and youth to be all that they can be and to thrive. And we know that there are youth in our community who are extremely vulnerable, and they need a safe place to go. So we're extremely supportive of this initiative. We'd like to offer the following considerations as you move this forward. This is an interim solution, and we know that. We also know that this is a priority for the provincial government. They have earmarked millions of dollars to invest in affordable, transitional, and emergency shelter. For your consideration, I'd like to recommend that we develop a partnership with the provincial government to engage them in investing in the long-term solution in terms of youth supports, transitional and emergency shelter in Peel Region, in Brampton, moving forward. Secondly, I'd also like to propose that the interim shelter is going to take a few months to get up and running. In the meantime, we have homeless youth in Brampton. We do have the capacity and the expertise in this community to start delivering services to those youth now before the interim shelter is in place. It would require a small investment by the Region of Peel to provide outreach to the adult shelters, to youth in the adult shelters, opportunities for counseling and family reunification, to begin some health services, alcohol and addictions counseling, etc. So that was one consideration we'd also like to put forward, is that we initiate those services now. And then our last recommendation, but certainly not least, is that in order for this youth shelter in Brampton to be successful, it's going to require bringing together a number of partners from the community. And we'd like to suggest that a table be formed, a planning table be formed, to bring those partners together to have a discussion how we're going to create a best-in-class youth shelter in Brampton right from the start. So bring together the players that would be involved in that so that they could develop a project charter and identify how we're going to work together, what are the values, what are the priorities that we're going to work on together to ensure that this is a best-in-class youth shelter, to ensure that we're optimizing the opportunities and providing them with the potential that they deserve. So those are our comments from the United Way in terms of this extraordinary action that Council is taking to create a shelter in the city of Brampton. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and if you just stay in place, Mayor Jeffrey.
Thank you, Shelley. And thank you, everybody, for being here today. And I think I'd been on the job about 2 or 3 months when we first talked about this issue and the gap in services. So thank you for staying persistent and bringing this issue to my attention, because it certainly wasn't something I was aware of when I first started the job. I want to thank staff for moving so quickly on this issue, and I know that we asked a lot of staff to turn this around very quickly, and I want to thank Councillor Moore and Councillor Miles for having worked with staff to achieve this result. I'm very pleased with this report. When I read it yesterday, it occurred to me that there were a couple of things missing from it. So I understand that Commissioner Sheehy has been able to provide some additional language, which I think will meet some of the asks that you've indicated, Shelley, which would indicate that we would go and see the minister, or the regional chair would write to the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing on behalf of the Regional Council to advocate for permanent, predictable, and sustainable funding. So I think that addresses something that we need to make sure that our provincial partners are part of this long-term solution. I think we also want to make sure that our MPPs and our MPs know about this issue. We have a lot of new people in new positions advocating on our behalf, and the more knowledge they have, the better they will be. I can assure you that in the course of the renovations to this facility to make it suitable for youth that need it in Brampton, the city will work and try and expedite the building permits. So I know that's something that we feel strongly should happen more quickly. The last thing I would say is the one thing that you spoke about this morning that isn't contained in this current motion, but that I just tried to articulate this morning, it's the first red bullet we have here, is that while the space is being renovated, that Regional Council expand the existing outreach and community engagement services in Brampton. So I think that you're right, that while we're waiting, we heard loud and clear when we heard the presentation, I think in January, that this is urgent. This is an emergency. And even though we don't have the beds, we want to be able to provide those wraparound services and that safety net to limit and minimize the crisis that the young person is going through and their family. So if there's a way that we can do that, I think that this is a reasonable ask, and I encourage my colleagues to support it, and I will be supporting it, and I'm happy to move it, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. And we've brought it up on the screen in the for all members. Councilor Medeiros.
Thank you, through the chair. Thank you, Shelley. This is probably one of those issues that very near and dear to me. I remember when I first got elected and having meeting with your staff and meeting with Anita and talking about the issue similar to what the mayor raised. And I remember during the provincial budget deliberations, I whipped off a letter, copied all my colleagues, about asking for the ask for shelter, for beds. And seeing where it started and where we are now, and the impetus, and this really shows, public policy, social policy being developed, but it really comes down to the people, really comes down to the passion that was really expressed by your staff and working with them. I'd like to second the motion if possible, and also I'd just like to say I'd like to support, I guess, your asks as well. I think it's important. There is a crisis, and I'd like to thank also Councillor Moore and Councillor Miles for taking on their leadership on this files. And it's really near and dear, and it's really why you get into this, and really why I decided to get into this game, and to make this effective change. So I just want to say thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Miles.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I'm always complaining about how slow government is to react to situations. And so I can't tell you how pleased I am to see this report in front of you just a couple of months following our Place Peel's presentation to Council. And I think that what it does is it tells you that we can react quickly when there is an identified need, and that when Council decides to get behind an issue, that they can make things happen. And so for me, I'm very happy to see this report in front of Council and to actually see some results are going to happen. But even more than that, I know personally, I think Councillor Moore would echo my comments, is what I've learned in the last few months is that we as a region of Peel have a lot to learn about our youth and homelessness. When you look at the numbers today, that there's only 14 emergency beds for youth in the region of Peel, in an area that has a population of 1,300,000. We all know that there are a lot of young people out there that are vulnerable. And I think vulnerable doesn't even describe the situations that they're finding themselves in. So the work that we're going to be doing as a region to take a look at the broader issue to ensure that we do support our youth in the way they need to be supported is essential. It's absolutely essential, because this report is just the tip of the iceberg. But isn't it amazing that we're going to have 45 beds instead of or 44 beds instead of 14? I mean, that in itself is, that is really good news. So for me, it's important that we keep moving quickly, that we don't let this I'm not going to say fall through the cracks, because we won't, but we have to keep moving this forward. I agree with the recommendations that are on the floor, that we have to engage the province of Ontario in this discussion. But there was another report on our agenda today, and I'm going to ask my question through to the Commissioner of Human Services, because there has been a recent announcement that the province of Ontario is releasing funds, transitional funds, for housing for individuals who are in a situation of housing and homelessness. And I'm just wondering how we utilize those additional dollars in a different funding stream to support the work that we're doing with youth. So if I could put that through to Commissioner Sheehy.
Through the chair, if I may, I'd like to refer that question to Jennifer McLaughlin. Are you aware? You haven't received any? Okay. So it confirms that we have not yet received any detailed information on that funding.
Okay. There is a report on the agenda today, though, that talks about it. Okay. So you know the money's there, but you don't know how you're going to be able to use it?
I think it speaks to some of that.
We're having trouble hearing. If you could come down to the podium to respond, or to a mic.
That information has been in the report for Housing First. So the rent supplements, that we will be discussing that when the report comes up on the agenda, but that is not specifically for youth at this time.
So we have in our youth homelessness shelter, though, we are going to be dealing with youth from 16 to 24. So some of those individuals are adults.
Yes.
So I don't want that opportunity to not be sort of taken a look at as we move this forward. That it's probably, I don't know, but I imagine a lot of those individuals that are going to be going into our shelters would, in fact, probably be considered adult in the spectrum of 19 to 24.
Yes, and through the chair. So basically, where we can tie that into addressing youth homelessness, we will definitely use those funds to help them.
Good, that's what I wanted to hear. So I just also wanted to thank our new Commissioner of Human Services, Commissioner Sheehy. Her first day on the job, she met with Councillor Moore and I to address this issue, and she has given good leadership to her staff in bringing this forward in such a timely way, and also to Commissioner Smith in regards to her assistant with this as well. Also our medical officer of health, Eileen Davila, and the staff members that have worked as a team to bring this back to Regional Council so quickly. I think you deserve an awful lot of support for the work you've done, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Moore.
Well, thank you. I think it's important to recognize that while Brampton hasn't had a dedicated homeless shelter for youth, our youth homeless have been sheltered, not necessarily in the environment that is best for them, but there have been no youth in Brampton that have not been housed or brought to a homeless shelter when needed. I think that's what Councillor Miles and I learned through this process, that others were filling in the gap and we were doing what we could with the adult shelter. I think what this moves us to, though, is really a homeless shelter for youth on steroids, because it's a triage approach. It's not just a homeless shelter. It is bringing in all of the supports and resources that are needed so that those homeless youth don't become chronically and episodically homeless for the rest of their lives. That if we can get them at the front end and get them on a steady foundation, then they can move forward like other youth their age can do. And I think that that's what's going to distinguish this. We have had the conversation, while it may not be in the report, staff have been meeting with a lot of the community partners to talk about how do we triage the youth when they are brought to the shelter, the homeless shelter. Certainly issues around mental health and so on and so forth are going to have to be dealt there as well. When we met with staff to go over the report and bringing it forward, staff wanted to pose the question, do you want us to give council some options? And we said, no. If you've come up with a solution, council were very clear, we need it now, and we need to move forward quickly. And so we need a report that is very decisive in terms of moving this initiative forward. So I think staff, you've done an outstanding job in capturing the priorities of this council, the needs of the community, and I think this cleans up the language. I think this was the intent when we had the conversation last week. Adding the language in here in red, I think strengthens that and makes it more apparent. So I'm looking for support from all of our council colleagues because it's so easy to do what's right. Thank you.
Thank you. Well said. Councillor Fonseca.
Thank you, through you, Chair Dale. First, thank you, Shelley, for being here and your support and the support of the United Way. And thank you for emphasizing the importance of, as a community, us addressing youth and child homelessness in whatever way we can. Thank you to Mayor Jeffrey for putting this forward and continuing to, in terms of the urgency and the crisis that it is, and to Councillor Miles and Councillor Moore for also pressing, and to staff for making sure, and the new commissioner for making sure that in the report today, and in this motion, that it stresses and emphasizes that we see as a council that this is an emergency and crisis situation. And I just also wanted to note that Our Place Peel, Christy Upshaw, the executive director, and staff are here today, and I believe some members of the board. I just wanted to thank council and also staff for ensuring that they could come and delegate, and because of their experiences with the shelter at Our Place Peel. It is in Ward 3. I've been to the shelter many times, and I wanted to thank them because going through, being at that shelter, experiencing it, the fact that they have had to learn and adapt, and they listen to what the youth needs are when the youth come, and as reports have shown in the past, we have to, as a region, we've been turning away youth, and this will obviously this will address that. But in the interim and in the previous years, Our Place Peel has found ways to adapt and work within the system, whatever way they can, to find whatever resources they have to try to give the youth in an interim what they need so that they do have somewhere in a transition, to your point, Shelley, that they can call home even in an interim. So I fully support the motion here today, and moving forward, this is just an interim step, but I think forming a committee or a group, but finding not only a transitional shelter, but also a permanent shelter in Brampton, a second shelter, is extremely important to address the situation here. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Toby.
Yes, thank you very much. Through you, Mr. Chair, I'd like to thank you, Shelley, for your advocacy and for United Way's advocacy, constant advocacy for youth. Youth feel so disenfranchised. So many youth feel so disenfranchised now. They disenfranchised from society, disenfranchised from government, and I think this is a really great news story, because this is an example of government not moving like an iceberg. We actually got this done. So my compliments to staff and everyone involved in this. We got this done really really, really fast, and I fully support it. I'd particularly like to thank my colleagues from Brampton for adding these extra pieces in, particularly about the sustainable funding, because that's really, really what we need. We have, Councillor Unique and I sort of split the Cawthra Road shelter, and they're just bursting at the seams, you know, when you go up there. It's and you talk to people, the young people up there, and it really is heartbreaking. So you're right, this is a crisis, and it's something that we really need to address. We have addressed it, and we're going to move forward with it as quickly as possible. And I'm very glad to hear that Brampton's going to expedite the building permits, because that can always get in the way of a good project. So thank you very much for that.
Well said. Before I bring the resolution forward, there is a presentation as well by a staff member, and I think it would be worth hearing from the staff, particularly with, in fact, the view of the work that they've put into it, as well as we have quite an audience here today, and the youth have taken time to be here as well today on this particular issue. So, okay, so if I could, if Councillor Miles and Councillor Moore would move receipt of the deputation. All those in favor? Thank you, Shelley. And I'd ask now that Grace Karen, if you'd come forward and make your presentation. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you for allowing us to present today. My name is Grace Caron. I am the Acting Director for Community Access and Human Services, which is responsible for the operations of the homeless programs and the shelter systems. This is Leslie Moreau. She is a manager in our area responsible for the shelters. Before I begin, I want to acknowledge and thank many of the people who Council has already mentioned, but both Councillor Miles and Councillor Moore and Mayor Jeffries on bringing this issue to light, as well as our community partners who are here today. Just a few key community partners, but we have Salvation Army, Supportive Housing in Peel, Our Place Peel, and the United Way, all valuable partners in the providing of services and programs here in the region. I'm going to spend the first few minutes on just a very high-level homelessness. I've given you a lot of information in the slides that were provided, but I'm not going to go into great details. But I wanted to provide the context of the region's homeless, and then we'll talk about the interim solution that's already been presented and spoken about this morning. So this is definition of homelessness by the Canadian Observatory on Homelessness. In essence, what we talk about here is that it is a both complex and simple problem. It is lack of housing, but it is so much more than that. It is particularly complex for youth and our communities that they're facing. It's been 17 years since the original task force at Regional Council to respond to homelessness in Peel, and since then, Council has been very supportive both operationally and with capital investment in designing a system that's flexible and responsive. We've moved over these last 16 years to a housing-first approach in the way that we deal with the issue of homelessness, and we've evolved from reacting to isolated incidences and emergencies to a collaborative, integrated approach that's really focused on prevention, crisis response, transition, and aftercare. These are all elements. No one single siloed approach will deal with the issues, and the face of homelessness in our community is changing. The typology of homelessness, according to the Canadian Observatory, run the gamut from unsheltered all the way to the at risk of homelessness. And it's important that we have programs and services that align with each of these various needs. It should be noted that for many people, homelessness is not a static state. People don't move through these various boxes in a linear fashion. It's a fluid experience where one's sheltered circumstances and options shift quite dramatically and frequently. The Region of Peel's continuum of services and supports are aligned with those boxes. We have everything from street outreach programs that deal with the unsheltered all the way through to preventing homelessness in Peel. Our street outreach program, some details here, but we partner with community partners. This is a community-based intervention that happens in our community. The program staff meet with individuals directly in the community, which is accessible, and it's in some cases it remains in the community. There are people who are not ready to be sheltered or come in, so it's important that we meet people where they're at and provide services as to where they're at. Our emergency shelters provide individual and families experiencing homelessness with short-term accommodations, as you're aware. Our emergency shelter system in here include both regionally owned as well as community-owned beds. It's just a listing of the 3 regionally owned shelters. In the regionally owned shelter network, there's approximately 420 beds in the system at this time. Our community-owned shelters, our Place Peel Family Life Resource Center and Interim 1 and 2, and they equate to about 105 beds in the system. We have transitional housing facilities, both regionally owned and community owned. Transitional housing programs are designed to be longer-term supports that help people bridge from homelessness to stability in the community. It's around individual goal setting and is generally speaking for stay for up to a year. Our 2 regional owned transitional housing facilities, one designated for families and one for youth, and 2 community-owned, males and youth. Supportive housing in Peel, what used to be known as domiciliary hostels. This is specialized needs that's provided. It's 24-hour supervision. There's primary medical issues dealt with as well as the numbers on the site. And we have 3 supportive housing facilities in Brampton. They're community-owned and regionally supported. We provide transitional supports to our Ontario Works clients who experience frequent, chronic, and episodical homelessness when they're discharged from the shelter or when they're precariously housed and at risk of losing their housing. We provide dedicated caseworker supports at a smaller ratio to allow for case planning and individual goal planning with the individual or the family to attempt to stabilize them in the community. We believe that preventing homelessness from occurring is not only a more cost-effective, but the social return on investments of keeping people housed is worth the investment. Eviction prevention programs, so these are for working families and households facing hardship, and it's emergency assistance in relation to mortgage arrears, energy arrears, as well as it concludes our renovation program. We are funded for the homelessness stream both through regional contributions as well as through the Ministry of Municipal Housing in their consolidated homelessness funding. So as we've spoken about, on February 11th, Council heard the delegation regarding the issue and the immediate need and directed staff to come up with a short-term quick response to this issue due to the lack of shelter beds for youth in Brampton. We looked at stats to inform some of our options that we looked at. We looked at a number of different options, one of which was actually looking at using the existing system in a differently designed way. And at that particular point in time when we were consulting with key partners, Peel Regional Police and some of our agency partners, there was a number of concerns brought up about displacing one group in the system to service another. Fortunately for us, working with our realty here at the region, we were able to locate the Chinguacousy Learn Play Care site, which enabled us to leave the existing beds as is in the system. Our goal for operations is to work with our community partners, and certainly we absolutely endorse and agree with the United Way that a planning table with our community partners, with experts in the field, is the best way to get operational as quick as possible, but also have the best provision of services on site. So we are hopeful, dependent upon the permits for the building, that we can be operational in fairly short order by late summer at the very latest. Listing the program and services that to be offered. These are the programs and services that are provided as part of the general regional emergency shelter system, and then we will have specific youth staff and programming in place, partnering with our Place Peel. And just bringing us back to an important point that in parallel to this occurring, we'll come up with, it's the operational plan to meet the immediate need. We will also be using not only the information we get from who's using and what the need is in the new youth facility to inform the longer-term strategic development that's underway and that Council committed to on February 11th. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Medeiros.
Thank you, through the chair. Thank you for the presentation. Really good work. So I see the bricks and mortars. Just in terms of, out of curiosity, in terms of the outreach, how do we get this information? How do we let youth know that, do we? I know we'll work with different services and different organizations, but on the ground, how does that work?
Well, we will absolutely do outreach through our regular Nexus. There's a number of youth-serving agencies that we're well connected to, so we will have them as part of the planning and the outreach process. This community is extraordinarily well connected. They have a well-networked group, so it's a matter of getting the information to them, and they will share amongst themselves, but also making sure things like our website and 21131, like those elements are all updated with this site as to not only in the planning process, but when we're fully operational.
David?
In addition to that, Mr. Chairman, we are just bringing to conclusion a new mobile technology that will allow anybody in Peel, including youth who use mobile technology a lot, to identify where there is a homeless bed, a youth bed for them, and we'll be able to actually register and do it all online from their mobile phone. And when will that be operational, Gilbert?
The first release of the software, I'm not sure that it will include this piece. The first release is happening on May the 2nd. That one is being planned out in the weeks after, shortly afterwards.
So it's another way that they can connect. When we have that ready, I would recommend to Council we'll do a demonstration so you can see it.
Thank you very much, ladies, for the presentation. And if Councillor Miles and Councillor Moore would move and second the presentation. Thank you. All in favor? Carried. I certainly want to, before I bring the motion forward, it is posted on the screen, so we can take it as read. But I certainly want to thank all of the Brampton councillors that were involved in this, and particularly Mayor Jeffrey for strengthening the motion and for the work that you've done. And in particular, would really like to thank Councillor Miles and Councillor Moore for your persistence in ensuring that this was brought forward in a very timely manner. And as a matter of fact, I think it was accomplished in no more than 40 working days. So that's an incredible achievement for that. And Councillor Medeiros, certainly for your passion with respect to this. And I know you've spoken to it and have been involved behind the scenes as well. So thank you for your support. So it's been moved by Mayor Jeffrey and seconded by Councillor Medeiros. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried. Thank you very much. We have one more delegate today. It's Marianne Sansalone regarding advocacy for the Passenger Assist Program. If you'd kind of come forward and just remind you that you have 5 minutes.
5 minutes. Thank you. Excuse my back. 5 minutes. Okay. Thank you for this opportunity to speak and be heard for 5 minutes. It is a privilege and a pleasure to join this group in trying to make a better world for all, to share resources and live in harmony. My name is Marianne Sansalone and I have 4 children. I am here because of love. Love for my 2 severely disabled sons, Domenico and Roberto. They present with an advanced form of autism and a global developmental disability. I am not here to point fingers, lay blame, question your sense of social responsibility, or the direction of your moral compass. I am here in advocacy for accessible transportation to include attendant care for my sons and other individuals with special needs, so they can receive services and be active participants in their community, so they can participate in adult day programming and live a life of dignity and purpose. There's much ambiguity in the writings of policies, but please have no doubt that my sons need help such as transportation. Without this support, they will live within the narrow margins of partiality, looking from the outside in. They cannot operate a motor vehicle of any kind in order to drive themselves. They are too disabled. As their primary caregiver, if I do not prepare dinner for them, they don't eat. If I'm too tired to give them a bath, they remain dirty. One day I'm going to die. That is the reality that keeps me in good company 24 and 22 years strong with no sign of stopping. My last breath and my final word will be in advocacy of my sons. I believe that an inclusive society is possible. I believe in the integrity of this process, and I believe that together we can do great things. I sincerely appreciate this time to speak and to be heard. Thank you for the favor of your attention. And that was only 4 minutes. This is a visual tool that's used to teach. My sons are totally nonverbal, so how do you tell them, your bus is going to come in 15 minutes, and want them to be patient? So you do this, and there's other things, like I have 2 of them, so I sit with one so he can remain in a calm, alert state.
Yeah.
Any questions?
Actually, if you want to just take your seat, because I do have some people on the list.
I'm short, so can everybody see me?
That's all right.
I'm not used to sitting, but I'll sit, because I don't reach the ground, so I'm uncomfortable.
I know you mustn't get too much chance to rest, so we just like to accommodate you that way.
Oh, thank you.
Councillor Groves.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Marianne, for your delegation, and I'm certain...
Oh, hi. Oh, sorry.
Hi. It's okay. I'm short, too, but I wear high heels. So
I'm shorter. I'm not even 5 feet.
Okay, I'm taller.
I win.
Okay.
I win that one. Not that I want to win, but anyway.
You won that one.
Yeah, no, I'm short.
Well, thank you for coming in, and I'm certain that you're here not only on behalf of your sons, but certainly all the others who have the same concerns and share those same concerns, that have children who are unable to help themselves and that. And I know as a caregiver, I'm sure it's very wearing on you and very tiring. But Mr. Chair, through you, maybe to staff, because there's been a lot of confusion around what's happening with this. And I think that it's important that we provide some clarity to you and to others, so this way it lessens that confusion, because things went out and it wasn't clear in letters that have gone out or communication that's gone out on this program and what's happening and with the changes. So through you, Mr. Chair, to staff, if someone can provide some clarification, that would be great.
I would ask Commissioner Lebrecht to respond to that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members of council. Madam? Yes, appreciate you coming in today. Today's report is one of a series. It's simply our policy framework to meet AODA standards. And all we're recommending in the report is adoption of the Human Rights Commission definition of disability, which is the largest continuum. We will be bringing, and that'll allow us, with that adoption, will allow us to kind of look at all the folks that we're currently serving. And to Mrs. Sansalon's issue, her sons are currently getting service through one of your pilot programs with the Red Cross that we're funding. We believe many of those folks will be able to access trans help. We recognize not all of them will be, and then you need to make decisions on where you want us to go with that cohort of the people who are currently serviced, and we'll bring that back to you later this year so you can make the decisions on what service you want us to deliver. So, but today's report is simply one step in the legislative process to comply with new law. But it's a neat one because it actually extends, like currently we have 17,000 clients, and this will extend the continuum of people that we could serve subject to funding, to include all disabilities and not simply people who have a mobility issue. So we support the delegation and their work, but ultimately it's your decision and support of the two LHINs in making sure that we cover everybody's needs. But we can't do it all on our own. So.
Thank you, Dan. And just further to that, are you able to provide a timeline to the delegate of when we're looking at doing this?
Yes, in the report, our report 6.1, we talk about future reports this summer, late spring, summer, or maybe June, where we'll be bringing some initial points. But again, as we saw in the previous delegation, if there's an interest in kind of speeding things up, we can always take care of things. We're not just looking at simply the Red Cross program, we're looking at the entire continuum of care. So we're only a small part of that passenger assisted program. The LHINs actually support 10 times as much. So we have to work as a community to serve the community.
Right.
And that always doesn't, that takes sometimes a little time. But our first consideration is the people we're serving today,
Yes.
which includes the Red Cross program.
Okay, thanks very much. Does that help you, Marianne?
No. No, but that's okay. It's a process.
It's a
right?
process.
I have more questions than answers, and that's probably a good thing.
And certainly, if you have some more questions, I'm
I'll
sure
follow
the
up.
commissioner is happy to address them through his staff.
Okay,
Okay,
perfect.
thank you.
Thank you.
Council, there's still more.
Sorry.
Stay rested. Councillor Miles.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Marianne, for coming. Thank you for your big smile and your energy.
I have so much to smile about.
That you're amazing. I just want to say that it's really important that we, as policymakers, and especially when we're dealing with changes that may be necessary, are imposed on us by other levels of government, that we understand the implications of the decisions that we make. And so we need people like you who understand the system far better than we, because you live with it every day. We need to hear your stories, and we need to be able to understand the implications of the decisions that we're going to make. So thank you for being here. I so wish that I could say to you today that you are going to continue to have the passenger assist program, but I can't. But I so wish I could. I have a parent who suffers from dementia, so she cannot go anywhere without someone. And I could not put her on a bus or a TransHelp vehicle or anything else. So I in no way compare that situation to yours, but it does give you a sense.
A window. I'm in for the long haul.
Yeah.
Transportation is one thing. My sons are 24. They're the oldest of 4. So I don't see this as, oh, okay, phew, now I can rest, now I can retire. I'm never going to retire.
Yeah.
Because it's going to be funding for day programming. It's like eventually life is going to help me put them in a residential program because I'm going to die. Otherwise, if I could have a conversation with God, I said, listen, Marion, just relax. Chill. You're not going to die. You're going to bury your sons. I know that's what you want, and I'm going to give it to you. Then I said, okay, well, I'm not going to worry about that. I don't mind driving with them. I actually enjoy their company.
Good.
You know?
Good.
So this is one piece. And for me to get consumed with one issue of transportation, it's an important issue.
Yeah.
Because I drive them and they get some transportation, but that's one thing. What about friendship? What about purpose? Work for their hands so they can feel that they're able. What about a relationship with God? It doesn't end. It never ends. You know. So I don't get overwhelmed. I get overwhelmed, but I don't get overwhelmed because I'm in for the long haul, and I want to be all there. I don't just want to be, oh, mom's an advocate and she's got such a big mouth and she went to council and she, whatever, you know, that's not my style. It's not my style. You know, like I have moments, I don't want to admit it, but I'm angry sometimes. And I fight it because I think I'm doing a disservice to my sons and to God. And I am a Christian first and foremost.
Well, good for you.
So that's it.
And please keep making us listen. Okay?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Is that it? Not going to get
One more.
One more? No, that's okay.
Councillor Medeiros.
Oh, hello.
Thank you through the chair. Thank you very much for your powerful delegation. I'm sorry, one more question.
Oh, no.
But I'd first just like to ask through the chair to the commissioner, do we have an understanding in terms of the cohort, in terms of numbers, clients, or people using the passenger assist program? What is the uptake?
Within our, if I could through you, Mr. Chairman, within our current program that we fund through the Red Cross, it's about 128 people, but there's over 1,000 people a day that access day programming through other means themselves, ministry-funded program, taxis and everything else, but not through our programming. They'll all be technically eligible to actually see if they can get a ride or get a program.
So through the chair, then, there's a suite then of, I guess, other supports to support transportation, assisted transportation.
Yep. It's about the community coming together, and that's what we're doing. We're working with the LHINs, with the other community groups. We just provided the members of the advisory group with an update of a pilot we've just initiated with Canes, which is a community group that does work between kind of the Malton, east side of Peel and Toronto area about getting people to medical appointments across the border. So that's something we're going to work out between the ministry, us, and Canes. They're going to use our logistics systems in the back room. We're going to use them. And some of our clients will use their service to cross the border, which has always been an issue on paratransit. So it's all about working collectively. And in Peel, we've got 2 LHINs we have to work with. And there's probably something like in the range of about 14 transportation providers that are funded by the ministry, and then our own programs. And it's all about bringing them together and using different techniques, including technology, to make that happen. But it's a journey. It's not an end.
Thank you, through Mr. Chair. And just a question I have for you, Marianne. So you've spoken how important the program is. I guess for you, because of your journey, your life is really revolved around their support. When you do have this assistance, can you just speak to how it allows you to, give attention to, because you do have other children, you do have another life, and if you could just speak to that, what the impact for you of having this type of program?
I won't burn out, basically, because not to cry the blues, but my husband is a renal transplant recipient of 35 years. He just had surgery March 21. He had cancer. So anyway, there's other needs in the family. You know what I mean? And my sons are always going to be autistic. They're still autistic on Christmas morning. Like it was a 7.5-hour surgery, and somebody, was at Toronto General, and they know I live in Caledon, so they offered, stay at their place. I said, stay at their place? I got to go home. I have to unload the dishwasher. I have to be home. So in the morning, already that day, of course I'm going to be at the hospital. My husband's having surgery. I'm thinking my husband's going to die. But anyway, it went well. Now, that's another story. But so I went home. I had it all planned. We knew the surgery was March 21. I know my sons are still autistic. So I planned the meals for the week, and I planned that day not to be there. But I got to see them. I woke them up in the morning so I could put their socks on. Well, that's important. That's an important thing. So anyway, so we went to the hospital. I didn't get home until I think it was 12:30. Get my emails, because they're nonverbal. So how does the day program know what's happening? And they knew. They knew the surgery. They didn't see me at all. So then I get them off to their day program, because Tuesday they have rides, and I go to the hospital. And I come back at 1. I leave the hospital at 1, so I'm home at 2. Swing by, get some groceries, rush around. I had my dinner prepared. I'm home for them when they get home at 4:30. And the evening is normal. And then you do the same thing the next. But then we had the ice storm. So that was another, Mother Nature, she was not my friend that day. But anyway, so how does it impact me I don't know how much
It's huge.
I'm going to take, like, you know, because I'm a Christian and I'm patient and I find happiness where people find nothing. You know, like I go on 8-kilometer walks with my sons and they're nonverbal. So who's talking? Nobody. Who's me? In my head, talking, and you really do. Excuse me. You really do smell the roses. You know, it's winter, and the ice is beautiful. The snow is beautiful. The way it's on the trees, it's pretty. You hear people talking. You hear life happening. You know, but for me, for that 90 minutes. I'm with one of my sons. He's like I'm a small person. He's big. He's like 200. He's 2 of me. He's 200 pounds, and we hold hands. His idea. My other son, because he can't stand proximity, way ahead. But because autism, you know that they're so regimented and they're so predictable, and they get stuck in certain behaviors. I know what he's going to do. I know when we get to house 63, he's going to hit those little green things at the end with his tubes. I know when we get by that house 81, the dog's going to bark and he's going to kind of talk to the dog. I know these things, you know what I mean? I know he's going to run ahead as soon as he gets started driving. I can, like, come to my house, I'll tell you. What's that noise? Oh, that's just Domenico in the washroom. He vocalizes at this time of the day. Don't ask me why. You know? So, oh, sorry, my time is up. See, so it just might help me. Like I am afraid. I'm afraid that my husband's. I'm not too afraid of autism anymore. I'm afraid every day. I wake up afraid every day. I'm afraid of becoming a bitter person. That's the main thing that scares. I'm not afraid of hard work. I can't sit still. You can see, you know. I'm not afraid of waiting for services. I'm used to it. I was on a waiting list for Carrie's Place for 3 years for toileting. Took 13 years to toilet train my son Roberto. And the other day we're at the dinner table and he had an accident. I don't want to embarrass my son. But needless to say, I didn't have much of an appetite. I ate. Nobody had an appetite. But so this is the reality. I'm not afraid of that. It doesn't like depress me or you know. Oh man, I wish I could go on vacation. I wish I could. I call him the boss because he tells me when to get up and he tells me when to go to bed and what I do in between. And that's my choice. Because I've seen things. I've heard people. They drop their son off at Emerge like he's a piece of garbage. He's my son. Like there's no question. Anyway, I'm gonna ramble on, but I'll follow up. And you know, I think it's. Oh yeah, go ahead. Sure.
Okay, I have one other councillor that would like to.
Okay, great.
Say a few words. Councillor Yanika.
It's very nice to see you here. Marianne, I'm over here.
Oh, hello. Okay.
Marianne, I don't know if I'd put you in the dictionary under the indomitable human spirit or selflessness.
Oh,
but I can assure you God has a very, very special place for you. I wanted to follow up on Councillor Medeiros' comments because many years ago I had the privilege of being involved with the Church of St. Hilary when we established a respite care program. And you're the poster child for a respite care program that you've given your whole life. And the whole idea, many know what the respite care is. Can we give the caregiver a day off? Can we give her, and by the way, in our cultures, it's always the her, it's never the he, it's the mothers.
I don't take offense.
No problem.
People are people, we're all
the reality
human.
is, but my concern is, and I'm speaking to the bigger issue, and I think Councillor Medeiros was going there as well, you're very special and you're very necessary. If suddenly you don't feel up to the task, it's not you we have to look after, it's 3 people we have to help. So it's very important that we help you as well. The other concern, this is more for my staff, again, part of our culture, but many others, it is remarkable the number of people, you know, the life cycle, we're all at the same point in the life cycle. In my constituency, I meet a lot of Marians that life is otherwise good, but usually she, the mother, is the caregiver for a child who's your, and she's not living out the rest of her days in peace and tranquility. She's fearful of what you're fearful of, which is to say, instead of saying, well, your son's still young and healthy, you're 55, you've got 20, 30 years life. Oh, no, if I'm not here tomorrow, who looks after my child? It's a hell of a way to live, and you need to know, and this is my point, that it will be looked after, because otherwise you're fretting for a quarter century. It's going to be a tough quarter century, You might not make it, I'm being brutally, you might not make it through the, now I worry about you and I worry about your kids. So we have to help you to know that the continuum of care will be there. That way you get to enjoy these 25 years with your kid.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Wow.
Well, very well said.
Wow.
And Miriam, you've certainly shown us today that you're a wonderful mother and wife.
Here.
And, and your family is so blessed to have you. I can tell you that.
Thank you so much.
And thank you for advocating so strongly for not only your sons, but for the community. And, you know, we welcome you back anytime.
Thank you.
All right?
Thanks. Oh, thank you.
A motion of receipt
do I
of
get
the,
up?
yeah, you can go sit in the audience now. Okay, a motion of receipt of the deputation moved by Mayor Thompson, seconded by Councillor Starr. All in favor? We also have a presentation on this before I bring forward the report. It's, where are we here? David Margiotta. Welcome, and if you could just introduce who's with you for staff or
Yes.
for the council.
Thank you very much. I'm Dave Margiotta. I'm a program manager at TransHelp, and this is my colleague Ashlyn O'Hara. She is the advisor to the Accessible Transportation Master Plan project. Good morning, and thank you for having us, and thank you to Ms. Sensalon for bringing a face to some of the issues that we're going to bring forward today. As you're aware, the Region of Peel undertook to do a review of the accessible transportation services, which led to the Accessible Transportation Master Plan. Today, we're presenting you with the eligibility policy, which supports that plan.
So to begin, we're going to review the path we're on. So just to remind everyone, this is not a new project. The ATMP has been ongoing since 2012. We've made an extensive effort to begin with a stakeholder engagement piece. We have done over 150 outreach events, 4 full-day open houses with over 500 stakeholders in attendance, 144 customer surveys, 18 AAC presentations, 4 focus groups, and 8 workshops with council. So that's what we started with from 2012 to 2014, and then we continued on our path to 2015, and that was a year spent planning for change and beginning our organizational transition. 2016, where we're at today, is where our major implementation rollout happens. So this is where we're bringing forward our new eligibility processes. This is where recertification is going to begin, and also continued public outreach and education. And then in 2017, we'll continue to monitor that change and adjust to the feedback as needed. Today, our report is bringing forth a recommendation to adopt the Human Rights Tribunal definition of disability as defined by the AODA and the revised TransHelp eligibility policy, and further to forward this report to the Central West and Mississauga Halton Linds, as they have been a key stakeholder throughout this process, and we do anticipate future partnerships.
So our approach today is to present the policy for adoption, which is largely based on the AODA legislative requirements. We've identified some implications to that policy, and after adoption, assuming adoption, we'll have to go back and evaluate the impacts to individuals and come back to council with recommendations and options for how to move forward in upcoming reports.
So what is changing with eligibility? Here we have an image that depicts our current client base, which is very mobility aid focused, and then the potential of what our future clients are going to look like. Because we're shifting from looking at a disability to looking at the barriers in that environment, we can no longer selectively provide service to certain disabilities. Currently, we only serve physical disabilities. Within the definition of disability under the Human Rights Code, disabilities, the definition is going to broaden to include cognitive, to include Miriam Sansalone's sons, to include visual, sensory, and mental health disabilities. So the face of our clients are going to change.
So under the present model, TransHelp only serves a small segment of the population of persons with disabilities, and as we're restricted to only those with mobility aids. Under the 2017 criteria, the policy broadens, and so we will be able to serve a much larger community. What that means is that there are some people who are currently receiving services which may not be eligible for the same type of service in 2017. It also means that there are some people who currently are not receiving services which do not fall into the AODA criteria. The population of individuals who are underserved in the 2017 model is the population that we need to come forward with in the upcoming reports to provide information, impacts, and options to Council. I think we can look at the service that we provide in the idea of a spectrum. At one end, there is no service and, of course, no cost involved with that. At the other end of the spectrum is fully personalized, fully subsidized service. Of course, as we move along, there's increases in cost and resources. And it's for Council to decide where we would place the TransHelp service. For reference, the AODA asks us to bring all specialized services up to the point of conventional transportation. So the AODA provides for us a mark, which is the minimum requirements by law for the specialized service.
So what this really brings to us is the question of what does equity really look like? So we want to use an analogy to try and bring this position forward to you folks. So here we have 3 individuals who are trying to watch a baseball game over a fence. And what we want to make a distinction between is between equity and equality. So the image on the left depicts equality as giving everyone the same level of support, whereas the image on the right depicts equity as fairness and making sure people get the same access to the same opportunities. This is an important, thank you, this is an important distinction to make as TransHelp strives to provide equity. So we want to be the image on the right-hand side. What we are looking, so on the image on the left, you can see we've given everyone the same box. So we've given everyone the same access to support, but their access to view or their ability to watch that baseball game has not changed. Whereas the image on the right-hand side, we have the person on the far right where we've given 2 boxes to. The person in the middle that has a very small box, and the person at the end that has 3 boxes. So what we see here are people who require different levels of support to be able to reach the same point of access. And what this analogy can be transferred to for TransHelp is if we picture that fence to be conventional transit. And if we picture those boxes to be the different types of services and supports that we can give to clients. So for example, on the right-hand side, the one with the 1 box probably only needs, in the middle, probably only needs conventional transportation to get access to their community. The person to the right of them probably needs a blend of conventional transit and door-to-door specialized to access the community. Whereas the person on the far left would need probably full door-to-door services because of their disability. So what you can see represented there are our 3 categories of eligibility from the AODA, which we're bringing forward to you guys today, and that would be on the right-hand side, that would be conditional, and the left-hand side would be unconditional, needing TransHelp 100% of the time. So what we hope to show you guys today is that this is the model of the future service for TransHelp. We can't continue providing service the same way that we've been providing it today. And we need to endorse and adopt the AODA eligibility policy in order for David and I and our team under Dan to continue to work towards this and to continue to strive for improvements so that passengers and families like Miriam, who we had here today, have that support in the future.
And so we have identified our first round of implications of the new eligibility policy. Adoption of this policy will allow work to proceed with applications, new applications, and a recertification process. We'll come back to Council as we gather more information with options and recommendations to how to mitigate impacts to residents as a result of this policy.
That's it for us. Thanks.
Councillor Parrish.
Yes, I'm concerned a little bit looking at this. First of all, I applaud your presentation. I think the image was very good. It got the message across quickly. How much of the plan depends on taxis?
On taxis?
Yeah, you've got the taxi script and you've got door-to-door. How much would depend on a fleet of taxis being available?
Sure. Through the chair, we currently contract out about 60% of our services, and we are developing a model where we have standard evaluation techniques so that we can compare both the cost and quality of the different vendor providers against TransHelp providers. This is the beginning of being able to evaluate the best way of delivering the highest quality at the cheapest, the best price. So I would expect that we have resources already in TransHelp, which we continue to use. I would think that as we grow, we need to anticipate that we might have more of a reliance on contracted service. But I think it depends on where we decide to put service levels. So at some point, as we increase the amount of clients and the amount of demand, we will have to make a decision in terms of, are we going to continue to provide the service, and if so, how, what's the best way to do it, or are there considerations to come up with ways to limit the amount of service that we're providing because the demand is going to grow exponentially over the next few years.
The thing I'm very worried about is the whole Uber phenomenon. As everybody leaps on the bandwagon with Uber, right. You got to remember that only 30% of people have smartphones and can access Uber, and they're usually the 18 to 25-year-olds that are in good health. Right. And what is happening in Mississauga is we've had 42 license plates turned in from cab drivers because they can't make a living. And the more cities give in to this and say, oh, we're going to do a level playing field and we're going to put rules for everybody, right. The fewer taxi drivers you're going to have on the road that are police checked, safe driving checked. And the other thing about Uber that worries me a hell of a lot is they rate the passengers. So if you've got a passenger that's difficult to handle, right. Handicapped, has a problem, is complicated, they're going to get a bad rating, and those guys aren't going to come back. So as I watch city by city everybody falling to the Uber magic, it really concerns me, because Ron and I are on the taxi committee at City of Mississauga, and we keep sticking to our guns on this one. We don't want to give in, yeah. And we need your help because you need to actually speak up as well.
Again, through the chair, so I think that we, in our new service contract, very highly regulate the expectations of the vehicles, the insurance, and the operator, both in their history and in the training that is required of them. So I don't think that the Uber model, as I understand it, would be a suitable approach to TransHelp service.
For you, Mr. Chair, my concern's not your rating and your meticulous care. Yeah. My concern is the fleets of taxis that are on the roads now are going to diminish. Those guys can't make enough money. We've got to change the rules so that we can keep taxis on the roads. And by giving in to Uber, it really harms the taxi industry. So as careful as you are, you're going to get to the point where you don't have enough drivers.
So the services that are provided through TransHelp are operated under the region of Peel, not necessarily under the taxi licenses. But I don't think we would ever contemplate sort of a free-for-all sort of system for ourselves, and nor do I think that Uber would be a good fit for us.
They would not, and that's the other thing I think we all have to consider as regional councillors, that as Uber becomes all sexy and glamorous and everybody says we're giving into it, the TransHelp costs that will go up at the region will be phenomenal, because you have to transport people. You have to make sure they have a quality of life that we all support. So you don't have to comment. I'm just really concerned. A big smile. You were wondering, what the hell am I going to say to her? I'm just doing one of my little rants, sir. And I want people to pay attention, and I want the media to pay attention, that there are people in our society that will end up costing us 3 times as much to give them the same quality of life that everybody else has. Thank you for coming today.
Thank you. Councillor Medeiros.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair.
Yes, I mean, really.
I love that slide as well, equity and equality. I guess in terms of, it's still too early, budget implications, or, what are the parameters, what envelope are we looking to maintain current levels of funding, or obviously by increasing, so what is sort of, do we have an idea? If you can just provide some comments.
So we, through the Accessible Transportation Master Plan, it was identified that costs are going to quadruple by 2031. As the amount of clients increase, which will also quadruple by 2031, the costs are the best strategy, I believe, to avoid costs is through integration with conventional transit. Over the last decade, investments across the GTA in conventional transit means that some 98% of the fleets are fully accessible, which is low floor, in-vehicle announcements, exterior announcements. A lot of those vehicles and services are already able to be used by TransHelp clients, and I think integration is really our best strategy for cost avoidance. But even given that, we would expect that the demand and budget resources would increase over the next few years.
So just through you, through the chair, then I guess we'll expect, when we consider our next budget, there will be a further increase and exponentially as well. Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, could I respond to that? Oh, I have 2 chairmen. If I could, probably for Councillor Medeiros' sake and the new councillors, I think this council has been providing us budget increases in the range of 8% for about 5 or 6 years. Similar growth you've seen in your own conventional transit services. And we're expecting that to continue. And I think what the staff are telling us through the master planning work, if we didn't do some of these strategies, we'd be talking double digit, or putting caps on supply. We had a transition where we capped supply, and we had lots of dissatisfied residents. This council, probably 2 terms ago, sent us on a journey to try to start meeting the needs of this cohort of the population that are vulnerable. And I think at this point we can generally state that we're not turning away requests. We're challenged at times, and council has dealt with that in a fair manner. We can never have enough money to serve everybody. And the long-term goal is for those who can use conventional transit, if we move them on, we allow the residual fleet to take care of those who can't. And we have some residents that will never take conventional transit. They will never be able to take a taxi. The only way they can move is through a bus with somebody who can help get them on and off. And that's really about allocating the resources appropriately. So we're going to be going from, one of the bigger challenges is actually focusing on each trip. What are the barriers to the trip versus what is the barrier to the person? And different trips can present different barriers, and we will manage that in a way that balances the need and costs. And that's going to be, it's not easy. Nobody else has done it, but we have to at least set that as our horizon goal, because if not, then we're just raising lots of money and doing lots of busy work, but it's not effective.
Thank you. Councillor Sato.
Thank you, and thank you for the presentation today. Thank you also for providing this presentation to the Mississauga Accessibility Advisory Committee last week. Generally, the members of the Mississauga Accessibility Advisory agreed with the recommendations that are in the report with some concerns because, you know, you set the eligibility criteria and there will be some changes. They recognize that, and they represent a broad range of disabilities. You know, we have a legal responsibility, legislative responsibility to do this. I mean, that's the baseline. But more importantly, we have a moral responsibility here at the region. It's our job as regional councillors to provide accessible transit, and with the new guidelines, we have to extend the type of disabilities, which I think is very appropriate because we've had requests for years. I think we're long overdue extending these, and I've said that before. We have always restricted it to people that have a physical disability, and those that are blind were not eligible unless they also had a physical disability to use TransHelp. So many people were basically shut in because they could not get around using conventional transit. You know, it's going to take the recommendations that are in here, the redefining the eligibility, and the reviewing everyone again, because you did advise us that you were not recommending grandfathering the right to the TransHelp services. And that did not seem to pose a problem to the members of the committee. But if someone can use the conventional transit with assistance and with training, or the taxi chits, then, as you say, that will free up some space. But the bottom line is it is going to cost us a lot more because the numbers of people that will be eligible will extend. And at this point, we really don't know how many people that are now using TransHelp will be able to be moved to others. Councillor Parrish raised an excellent point about the taxi service, and we've had several meetings in Mississauga with the taxi industry to discuss the purchase and provision of the accessible taxi cabs. And I had a meeting the other day with the Mississauga Taxi Alliance, and they said with, as Carolyn mentioned, because of Uber and all these concerns, there is no taxi driver in Mississauga right now or anywhere that is going to go and spend $40,000 to purchase an accessible cab. So I think that is a reality no matter what we do with Uber. That thought that we have always had that there would be more accessible cabs and therefore we would be able to use that service, I think you do need to take kind of a revisit that and say we're not going to have access to those accessible taxi cabs that we thought we might have. We'll still have the ones we have today, perhaps, but that larger provision of taxi service is probably not going to happen. And we are hearing that from our Mississauga drivers. So that is going to have to be a change in the way we look at this as well. But I'm pleased, I would be pleased to move the recommendation because all we are doing today is approving what the OADAA requires us to do, which is increase the eligibility, the people who are eligible, and then staff has their policy here of how they plan on doing it. If this doesn't work, we can certainly revisit it. You know, nothing is ever cast in stone. And as you work through this process, if you find that there are areas that just cannot be done, then I know that Dan's going to bring it back to council and, you know, point those things out to us. But one thing I would ask, and this sort of follows from Marianne's presentation, the assisted service I think is very critical. that we continue to provide that. It's just so many people need it, and even if it was a small number of people, we need to be able to provide that service because it does tie in with other agencies such as the LHINs. What I would like you to do is, and I'm looking at Jeanette over there, I would like this to be on the agenda of the Health Integration Committee. And I think our next meeting is fully, our agenda is quite long for the next meeting, but as soon as possible, if we could have this whole issue on there and mainly focusing on the funding. Because I think it would be good for the LHINs to be able, the representative from the LHINs to be able to hear that. And in many cases, I know it's not exactly a health issue, but it kind of is, you know. I mean, that's the thing with all our services here at the region. They do tend to overlap from social service and health, which is a good thing. So if we could put that on the agenda, and maybe we can get some commitments through the LHINs as we're moving forward on this, but I will move the recommendation. I'm not sure who's sharing it, Frank, if you are, or if we went to committee. You're still.
I'll bring it forward.
Okay. Yeah, we could bring it forward and deal with it today. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ennis.
Thank you, through you, Chair Dill. Thank you for your presentation. Also, a very big thank you to Marion. She brought this to my attention a few months ago, and I've been meeting with staff ever since with regards to this issue. It's unfortunate. She's a wonderful advocate, but it's unfortunate that she's not a unique case. So this is definitely an issue that we need to move forward. I want to thank the regional staff for embracing cognitive disabilities as providing service for them. In my ward in particular, we have a day program for adults with cognitive disabilities that service not only Caledon residents but also Brampton residents. And the fact is that there are very few programs out there to accommodate the needs of these residents. And so they're having to cross boundaries and find transit and need assistance in order to service those programs so that they can fulfill their lives. So I fully support that we're moving forward with this, with compliance. It's something that we need to do. I agree with Councillor Seda with regards to the LHIN and their funding and their involvement. I think that we need to have a clear understanding of exactly what their role is, and I also think that it's important that this matter be brought up with our Government Relations Committee, because I think that that's something that we need to address through them in advocating with the province. It's legislation change that they're suggesting, and even though we agree with it, it's inclusion, but the fact is the funding has to follow. So if we can work with that, that would be great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and I want to thank both you staff members for the hard work that you've put forth with regards to this file, and we certainly look forward to more reports coming forward and following up on that. So thank you. A motion of receipt moved by Councillor Ennis, seconded by Councillor Kovac. All in favor? Carried. And then I have a motion moved by Councillor Sato, seconded by Councillor Groves, that the revised Trans Health eligibility policy attached as Appendix 1 to the report of the Commissioner of Public Works titled Trans Health Eligibility Policy be approved in compliance with the requirements of the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act, OADA, and further that a copy of the subject report be forwarded to the Central West Local Health Integrated Network and the Mississauga Halton LHIN. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried. Thank you. It moves us to Public Works, but that's been dealt with, so you get off easy, Councillor Starr, today. Items related to health. Councillor Moore, if you'd be kind enough to take us through this section.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Members of Council, the first report is an update on the proposed provincial changes under the Smoke-Free Ontario Act. It is here with a recommendation. It's seeing no questions. Moved by Councillor Gibson, seconded by Councillor Raz. All those in favor? That's carried. And second item is item 7.2, the report from the March 31st Community Water Fluoridation Committee. Seeing no, Council.
I'm on, I think.
Councillor Parrish?
Yes, I'll move the report and also draw everyone's attention to the request of the committee for an interpretation as to whether we can conduct our meetings with, they're in public, but we only want delegations that we invite from the committee. Otherwise, it's going to turn into a three-ring circus. So we just wanted to confirm with council that it's a working group, that there will be delegations, we will accept them, but they will be ones that we invite because they have some important piece of information to share with us. So just want to make sure everybody nods.
Delegations will be in full council. Everybody's nodding? Everybody's okay? Looks like everybody's okay.
Good, thank you very much.
Move the minutes, seconded by Councillor Shaughnessy. All in favor? That's carried. And there is one item of communication from the Minister of Health and Long-Term Care. It is here for receipt. Moved by Councillor Palashi, seconded by Councillor Carlson. All those in favor? That's carried. Mr. Chairman, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, and I believe there's one item under Human Services. Councillor Miles.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the first item on the agenda is the rent supplements for the homelessness partnering strategy housing, and it's here for your information. I'll take a mover. Moved by Councillor McFadden, seconded by Councillor Downey. All in favor? That's carried. Excuse me, the second item has already been dealt with. Sorry, and that's it. And that's it. Back to you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you. Items related to enterprise programs and services. Councillor Fonseca, if you chair this section, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item 10.1 is the final levy bylaw. Seeing no questions, moved by Councillor Sato, seconded by Councillor Miles. All in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Item 10.2 is the operating financial triannual performance. Seeing no questions, moved by Councillor Ross, seconded by Councillor Medeiros. All in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Item 10.3 is the capital performance and impact on capital reserves. Councillor Ross.
Sorry about that. That was, if I could, I wrote a note to myself, sorry, on 10.2, point 9. So can I just make a comment to staff to go back? We don't have to open it up, but just a comment. Next time you do the service delivery results, would it be possible to put in the future targets, so 2016 targets in this case? Thank you.
And okay. Councillor Fonseca, yep. There's Rob Elliott was to do a presentation on 10.2.
Oh, I apologize. I had it noted down that it was 10.3. I apologize. Do we? You can move forward.
We can come forward, yeah.
Yeah, come forward.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning, everybody. With me today is Norm Lund, our Manager of Business and Capital Planning. So today I'm pleased to provide Council with a brief overview of Peel's 2015 financial performance. This presentation covers the following agenda items from today's agenda package, which is item 10.2, the Operating Financial Performance Report, 10.3, the Capital Performance Report, and 10.4, which is a Financial Policies and Compliance Report. Overall, at the end of 2015, the Region of Peel has an operating surplus of $21.2 million, or on a budget variance of 1.7%. Tax-supported programs have a surplus of $29.5 million, or a variance of 3.2%. Within the tax-supported programs, regionally controlled programs have a surplus of $22.3 million, or a variance of 4.3%. And external agencies, which are comprised of Peel Regional Police, OPP, Conservation Authorities, and MPAC, the Municipal Property Assessment Corporation, have a combined surplus of $7.2 million. or a variance of 1.8%. Utility rate supported programs have a deficit of $8.3 million, or a variance of negative 2.5%, and that's on a utility budget of $333 million. I'd like now to focus on the tax-supported programs. Regionally controlled approved, or regional council rather, approved in 2015 a gross operating budget of $2.1 billion to provide funding for the region to maintain existing service levels, meet the service needs of its residents, and the service demands of a growing community. Peel's budget accuracy track record provides assurance that the annual budget accurately reflects the needs of the community and the financial risks affecting Peel's operating results. As seen on this chart, 4 of the past 5 years have been within our target budget variance of plus or minus 3%. At the end of 2015, the tax-supported programs, including police services, had a surplus of $29.5 million, 22.3 for region and 7.2 for external agencies, a total variance of 3.2%, which is slightly outside of the target, and which is also an industry standard. Essentially, we are on target, though. 1/3 of that variance, or 1.1%, is due to unanticipated revenue. The remaining 2.1% variance is due to operating results. I'll provide further details in the next 2 slides about the major drivers of these variances. Further, the 2015 budgeted contingent rate stabilization reserve draws of $10.6 million, including police services, were not required, thus positively impacting Peel's financial flexibility. Each year, variances are analyzed to assist with future budget planning. This slide highlights one of the major drivers of the 2015 variances affecting the tax-supported programs. Unanticipated revenue accounts for about 1/3 of the 2015 operating surplus. This includes additional external funding and higher supplementary taxes. This is partially offset by lower commodity revenues, which is about $900,000 and not shown on the graph. What you see in this slide is a 5-year trend for external funding and supplementary taxes and tax write-offs. The chart on the left shows unanticipated external funding in the past 5 years as reported to Council. In 2015, changes in external funding primarily affected health, waste management, and police services. For example, public health received new needs-based funding of $2.7 million. There was an additional 100% public health ministry funding for current and prior years of $1.5 million, and additional Waste Diversion Ontario funding of $1.9 million. Wage recoveries in Peel Regional Police related to the Pan Am and Para-Pan Am Games were also realized for about $1.6 million. The chart on the right shows a 5-year trend in supplementary taxes and tax write-offs, including payment in lieu of taxes. The revenue has varied in the past 5 years from a deficit of $8.8 million to a surplus of $7.3 million. In 2015, supplementary taxes and tax write-offs had an overall favorable variance of $2.6 million. The largest driver of this favorable variance was the reduction in assessment appeals finalized at the Assessment Review Board, which led to lower tax write-offs. And this was especially evident in Mississauga, where the number of appeals finalized in 2015 was 1,940, down from 3,100 the prior year. These drivers are inherently difficult to control or foresee. Adequate tax-supported rate stabilization reserves are available to mitigate potential deficits. Surpluses can be used to mitigate future pressures and bring stability to our tax and rate payers. Other major drivers of 2015 variances affecting the tax-supported programs were program operating results. Operating results represented 2.1% of the overall tax-supported budget variance. Over the course of the year, there were a number of changes with respect to commodity prices, service demands, and service deliveries. For example, fuel costs remained low, resulting in savings of about $1 million to the region. Service demands were much higher than anticipated for taxi trips and accessible transportation. Although the overall number of trips remained relatively close to budget, the mix changed, and we've just heard about that. In Ontario Works, average caseload was over 500 cases above the 2015 budget assumption of 17,000. In addition, there were savings due to transitional efficiencies while service delivery models in public health were being adapted. Savings in the Employment Service Program due to the redeployment of staff to assist with the implementation of the new provincial Ontario Works system known as SAMS, and the challenges experienced in the Habitat for Humanity program with respect to obtaining permits. In 2016, staff will continue to review and monitor the impact of the 2015 service demands and financial performance to inform the 2017 planning cycle. As for the utility program, reported to Council in August 2015, and during the 2016 budget, a deficit was forecasted on the utility rate-supported programs. With all final billings and accruals completed, the utility rate-supported programs ended the year with a deficit of $8.3 million, a variance of minus 2.5% relative to the utility program of $333 million. This was largely driven by lower Peel direct billings, which is about $10.7 million, due to lower volumes. As seen on this slide, the year-end position of the utility rate-supported programs has fluctuated in the past years. This has been largely driven by the volatile water revenue, as billed volumes are impacted by declining water consumption patterns and weather patterns. Specifically, the drivers for 2015 variances in the utility rate-supported program include lower water consumption, and as Council is aware, Peel's employment sector has seen a shift, which led to a loss of some manufacturing and other water-intensive industries. Over the past decade, non-residential consumption has declined. Changes to built form, such as intensification, smaller lot sizes, water-efficient toilets and shower heads, are also contributing to an average decline in water consumption. Changes in summer weather patterns also affect outdoor water use in the summer seasons. As you may recall, the 2015 budget and the 2016 budget included a 2% and a 4.7% adjustment to the volume assumptions. Staff continue to review the consumption forecast model to better refine our future planning. Another driver was wastewater surcharges. In 2015, wastewater surcharges revenue was higher by about $1.4 million as the number of accounts have increased. Other operational variances include things like chemical uses. With lower volume, we used less chemicals, and that was about $1 million savings. So in 2016, staff will continue to review and monitor this information and develop the 2017 budget. Now I'd like to shift to the capital results. As noted in the 2015 capital budget, the region is required to build significant infrastructure to provide regional services in order to support growth and to maintain a state of good repair. As seen in this chart, the regionally controlled gross budget for capital projects underway amounted to $6.4 billion, with $4.3 billion, or 67% of that, capital works being done to date, and $2.1 billion, or 33%, remaining as work in progress at December 31st of 2015. Approximately 2/3 of the $6.4 billion total capital program is composed of previously approved capital works. This is due to the fact that the majority of Peel's capital work program consists of very large projects, some taking 5 to 8 years to complete between start and finish. During the year, the work in progress balance decreased by just under $800 million, due to capital spending of $716 million and projects coming in under anticipated costs by $72 million. In addition, 96% of the capital works is progressing or has progressed as planned. Moving to the bottom portion of the slide, the regionally controlled projects, comprising of 1,434 capital projects, 1,079 are active, 355 have been completed, are actively monitored and measured. Of the total number of projects, 48% are in progress, as noted on the left side of the bottom half of the chart, and 48% were completed or are in the final stages of completion. This graph shows the gross capital budget spending for regionally controlled programs. Average annual spending over the past 5 years has been just over $600 million annually. In 2015, $716 million was spent on capital projects, with $207 spent on tax-supported projects and $509 million in the utility-supported program. The capital works spending was largely driven by public works, which typically represents the majority of capital activity within the corporation. The capital projects that experienced higher than budgeted spending were utility rate projects such as Hanlon Feeder Main, Mississauga, and Brampton Water Main replacements, the Aloha Reservoir and Pumping Station, West Trunk Sewer, and Etobicoke Creek Trunk Sewer twinning. A summary of the 2015 capital investments is included in the capital report. As projected, no new external debt was required to support the 2015 capital program. However, $36.7 million was borrowed internally from reserves to help fund the DC capital work. As indicated in the 2016 budget, staff anticipated that a debt issuance may be prudent in 2016 to support the DC program and to take advantage of relatively low interest rates in this market. On March 31st, 2016, Council approved debt issuance of up to $200 million to support implementation of the DC capital plan. The 25 projects with the highest gross remaining budget make up 46% of the total remaining budget of $2.1 billion. Given the relative value and potential impact on cash, additional focus is placed on these projects. As noted in the accompanying council report, implementation plans for all 25 of these projects are in place, excluding the PERC, or the Peel Energy Recovery Center project, because for PERC, council had moved the $75 million non-debt financed portion to a new waste management project to support the 75% diversion target rate, and we've canceled the remaining debt financed project, which supports Peel's overall health. Regular council and management oversight ensures issues or challenges related to the capital program are detected early in the process, thereby minimizing any risk to Peel's financial condition. Now I've presented you with the 2015 operating and capital performance, I'm going to give an overview of the evolving pressures that Peel is facing in 2016 and beyond. As seen in the orange boxes on this slide, evolving pressures facing Peel in 2016 include external funding, the environment, the economy, legislation, weather, service demands, and operations. For example, the new announcement under the Ontario Disaster Relief Assistance Program limits the amount of funds to assist municipalities with disasters. For costs that reach 3% of a municipality's net levy, and in the case of Peel, that would be about $28 million, 75% would be covered, so that would be $21 million. For costs greater than 3% of our net levy, 95% would be covered. A presentation to Council on this new program is expected to be delivered in May. In health services, public health mandatory program funding models have been changed to a needs-based approach. The impact has been included in the 2016 budget. In addition, oral health programs are being updated or uploaded effective January 1st, 2016. In long-term care, adult day services will be enhanced and expanded at 4 of the existing Region of Peel sites until June 30th, 2017. In housing, to help address Peel's growing wait list for housing, a portion of the surplus is recommended to be allocated to the capital reserve to support new housing development. Throughout the years, staff actively monitor these pressures, identify risk, and mitigate the risks where appropriate. The green boxes at the bottom of the slide provide examples of how risk factors are managed. As part of Peel's long-term financial planning strategy, financial flexibility is managed by having in place rate stabilization reserves to fund unanticipated costs and/or changes in revenues. Staff will continue to review and monitor the risks affecting the 2016 financial performance, as well as assess key budget assumptions to inform the development of the 17 budget. This slide summarizes the 2015 surplus management actions as recommended by staff in today's council report. These actions address some of the pressures Peel is facing, as highlighted on my previous slide. In the regionally controlled tax programs, the surplus was allocated to rate stabilization reserves to address various operating pressures and to capital reserves for housing and homelessness to reduce the wait list. Operating variances associated with police services were allocated to police-related reserves in order to assist with their overall financial sustainability. In the utility rate-supported program, after the management action to balance the year-end deficit position, the utility rate-supported stabilization reserve balance is 3.1%, which is below the minimum 5% as required in the reserve management policy. A transfer of $8.3 million from wastewater capital reserves to the wastewater rate stabilization reserve is recommended in order to bring the balance of the utility rate reserve into compliance with our policy. The wastewater capital reserves will be examined as part of the annual reserve adequacy assessment to inform future capital planning infrastructure levy requirements. The above recommended surplus management action supports Peel's overall long-term financial objectives to ensure financial flexibility and the protection of regional assets and services. Also included in today's council reports is the Financial Policies Compliance Report. As indicated in the report, adjustments to the operating budget, capital budget, and reserve funds are all in compliance with these policies. The budget and reserve management policies continue to provide appropriate balance between executing and operating the region's interests and managing our internal controls. And that concludes our presentation for today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rob, for the presentation. We do have a question from Councillor Starr.
Yeah, just a great presentation. I love the way you presented it. It's very easy to understand.
Thank you.
The point that I wanted to just ask in is general, when you have unanticipated revenues, as you indicated at the very beginning, and one of them stands out as fuel. Fuel's been relatively low. What happens to that relative to what you're budgeting for or thinking about in the next year or two? I guess the question is, do we maintain the, let's use a figure, the $10 million that we're going to use for fuel for the next couple, 3 years, or what happens to that $1 million, $1.5 million savings?
That's exactly right. There was an informed decision to hold the assumptions around fuel charges static last year, and the intention is that will offset the variances that we anticipate. So that's correct. That will help stabilize it over the years.
So what happens to that $1 million? Where does it sit?
Or Norm, do you want?
So what typically happens at the end of the year, we see a surplus. We come back to council to recommend where the surplus goes, and it usually goes in the general working fund reserve. With respect to how it informs the next budget, at the end of the day, what we look at is how volatile does the fuel rate look like it's going to be in the future. If it looks like it's going to spike back up, then we have to decide whether or not we leave it because it's going to go up, or we decide if it's going to go down, how much we'll let it go down under the understanding that if it goes back up, we're making the tax rate go up and down as more of a stability versus minimize the budget amount decision.
Well, I guess you've answered the question. So the line that you're using for overall fuel rate, we could be saving another $1 million for 2016 if things remain about the same. And then that'll be used for general revenue someplace else?
Yeah, at the end of the year, it goes into surplus management, and it's used to fund other things is where it ends up typically.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Rouse.
Thank you very much for your presentation. You mentioned briefly in the operating results that in terms of there was service demand, there was over 500 cases that was unanticipated. And I'm just wondering, what are we seeing trends based on our economic outlook and how we're going to be budgeting for that in the future?
Actually, I'm not sure if there's more up-to-date information rather than the year-end information that might be available through Human Services.
Through the chair, at this point, I will have to get back to council with updated numbers. I know that there have been some issues in the past relative to the implementation of SAMS, of coming up with an accurate caseload and forecast.
Thank you. And just a quick question, I think this would be to Dr. Davila. Also under the service delivery results, I note that for the managing the immunization records, we reviewed approximately half of what we had targeted, and I'm just wondering if you can shed some light on that piece, please.
So through the chair, there were some changes made to the information system and being introduced. There was a new information system that was introduced that year, so we actually reduced the amount of screening simply to be able to allow ourselves to, to successfully introduce the new system by which to manage immunization information. You'll note in subsequent years that we go up back again. So that was the issue there. New information system required a little more attention. We put our attention there, recognizing that we would have a bigger screening process in subsequent years.
Thank you, and overall good financial report.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Starr, would you like to move the presentation? Moved by Councillor Starr, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Item 10.3 is 10.2 was moved by Councillor Ross. 10.3, the 2015 capital performance and impact on capital reserves and reserve fund.
Councillor Fonseca, we need a mover and a seconder because we're in council.
Moved by Councillor Starr, seconded by Councillor Gibson. All in favor for the presentation. Any opposed? Carried. 10.2 was moved by Councillor Ross, and did I give a seconder for that? Seconded by Councillor Shaughnessy. All in favor? Any opposed? Carried. 10.3 moved by Councillor Madero, seconded by Councillor Pelleschi. All in favor? Any opposed? Carried. 10.4 is also for information. It's the financial policies compliance update, December 31st. 2015 for information, moved by Mayor Jeffrey, seconded by Councillor Sato. All in favor? Any opposed? Carried. 10.6 has already been moved. 10.7 is an update on the Region of Peel's energy and environment sustainability. And there's actually an edit to be made in bullet point 1, 2, 3, 4, the hedging agreements for electricity in the report highlights, hedging agreements for electricity and natural gas mitigated. It says 503,700. It should read 360,951 to coordinate with the graph and the detail in the report. Seeing no questions, moved by Councillor Gibson, seconded by Councillor Moore. All in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Item 10.8 is public sector network update and budget. Seeing no questions, moved by Councillor Sato, seconded by Councillor Tovey. All in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Item 10.9 is the implementation services for open text platform report. Seeing no questions, moved by Councillor Miles, seconded by Councillor Gibson. All in favor? Any opposed? Carried. And there's one item of communication, is 11.1, is the Association of Municipalities of Ontario. Moved by Councillor Mahoney, seconded by Councillor Kovac. All in favor? Any opposed? Carried, and back to you.
There's actually a resolution to go with 11.1. We're looking for direction.
Where is
we can post the.
Oh, can you put it?
We can post the resolution on the screen for you.
Yes, it's right below. Okay, yes, please.
And Councillor Fonseca, I don't know if Commissioner Offwegen had a comment with respect to this.
The resolution?
Certainly, through you, Madam Chair, back in September of last year, Council endorsed a position that was submitted to the province with respect to prudent investor status. The communication that's been circulated is different than the position of Council, so we're trying to bring forward a motion here to continue to support the position that Council has with respect to allowing the Region of Peel, which would benefit Brampton, Mississauga, and Caledon, that prudent investor status.
Seeing no questions on the board, I do know we had a discussion when this was originally brought forward. So we need a mover and a seconder for the resolution. We'll move by Councillor Pelleschi, seconded by Councillor Moore. All in favor? Any opposed? Carried. to you,
That's great.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Other business? Seeing none, then notice of motion? None. Bylaws. Let's see. Moved by Councillor Ennis, seconded by Councillor Raz, that the bylaw listed on Regional Council agenda being bylaw 28-2016 be given the required number of readings, taken as read, signed by the regional chair and the regional clerk, and the corporate seal be affixed thereto. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried. Thank you. In camera. Yeah, there is. I don't know if there's a need to go into camera, but okay, if somebody'd like to move 15.2, moved by Councillor Grove, seconded by Councillor Shaughnessy, all in favor? Carried. And then 15.3, moved by Councillor Kovac, seconded by Councillor Downey, all in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried. Moved by Councillor Gibson, seconded by Councillor Medeiros, that bylaw 29-2016 to confirm the proceedings of Regional Council at its meeting held on April 14, 2016, and to authorize the execution of documents in accordance with the Region Appeal bylaws relating thereto, be given the required number of readings, taken as read, signed by the regional chair and the regional clerk, and the corporate seal be affixed thereto. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried. Moved by Councillor Mahoney, seconded by Councillor Starr, that the April 14, 2016 Regional Council meeting be adjourned. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried. Thank you.